John Maxwell said, you can only take a person as far as you have gone yourself. Today, we're going to talk about how we can take ourselves further and get better at taking care of ourselves so we can lead our wives effectively. Stay tuned. Welcome back to another episode right here on the Husband Coach's Corner, the podcast designed for husbands to learn how to love their wives every day and become better men in the process. I'm your host, Chris Scott, and today we are talking about starting with ourselves so that way we can lead our wives and that way we can grow. Now, we all know marriage is a journey. It's this thing that we set out on at the beginning of our relationship, maybe even leading through the proposal, going all the way up to the point of being at the sanctuary or the altar. And then we kind of don't know what happens after that. Well, that's actually where the journey truly begins. The moment you say, I do, the real journey begins of how do we grow as husbands so that way we can lead our wives effectively? And it doesn't matter what stage of marriage you are in, the first 5 years, the next 10 to 15 years, doesn't matter how long you've been married. Every single husband must learn how to take care of themselves and how to grow and constantly grow, so that way we can lead our wives effectively. That's the crux of today's episode. We're just going to unpack that. Now, I have my notes over here on the screen, so if you're watching the video version of this podcast on whatever platforms, be it YouTube or Spotify, just know that I'm going to be looking off a little bit because I want to make sure that I touch on all of my points for this particular episode, because as husbands, if we don't learn how to grow, how to take care of ourselves, it's going to be really, really hard to walk in the shoes of being the leader. Now, I want to be very clear. When I say leader, I don't mean a dictator. All right. When I say leading our wives, that means we're doing the things that are selfless so that way our wives can follow suit. It's kind of that idea of laying down ourselves so that our wives will have a better future, a better way forward. Whatever that means in the form of sacrifice or work ethic so that our family is taken care of, that's what I mean by leading. Okay. I don't mean causing demands. I've said in multiple episodes in the past that our wives will follow us if we lead well and if we lead effectively. Well, the way that you lead effectively is you start to take care of yourself and you grow so you can go further than you've gone before, and you trailblaze or you set the path for your wife to follow. That is what we are going to be talking about today. And that is the mindset, that is the philosophy that I'm coming from with all of the notes that I'm going to be sharing. So if you find value in any of this content throughout, interact with it however the platform that you're listening to this on allows for. And if you want to get in touch with me, send me an email at husbandcoach2020@gmail.com. if you want to just learn more about becoming an effective, loving, and caring husband. All right, so here's the deal. Go further so you can bring your wife along with you. How do we do this? Well, there's a few ways that we can do this. The first step is you got to read more than you currently do. If you are reading or listening to things that you're not interested in, or you're just trying to constantly grow and self-improvement, you're going to find yourself burning out. All right. As a person who really does enjoy growing through knowledge and learning things, I find myself burning out and having less drive to go and learn more information. But when I get more out of the things that I'm learning, because the things that I enjoy, and how to be present in the moment with the things that aren't quite the things that I enjoy. All right. Or when I'm trying to learn something that may be complicated or difficult. So reading more than you currently do is absolutely going to help you because it's also going to trigger your growth mindset in a way that other things just They don't. It's that simple. Like being able to open a book and read some pages, sitting down somewhere quietly. And it doesn't matter how many pages you read. I mean, obviously, relative to how much you currently read, if you don't read at all and you open up a book and you read a page a day, hey, that's great. Do it. Continue that habit, build that habit. But if you already read a lot, then we already talked about ways that you can continue growing. So I won't belabor that particular point. I think that that drives home pretty well. The second thing that you can do in order to go further or grow further is wake up 30 minutes earlier than you already do. All right. So if you're like me, maybe you wake up at 5:30. Well, try waking up at 5 o'clock. All right. The reason why you want to wake up a little bit earlier than you normally do, and I'm not saying like you should be a 4:30 a.m. person. All right. There's some people out there who wake up at 4:30, power to them. If that is you, kudos. I'm happy that, you are getting up at 4:30. But the goal here is really to get a little bit of extra time in the day to prepare. You will be surprised at how helpful it is in preparing yourself. Like anyone who is prepared to take on a task or to take on the day is going to be that much more successful. And this is probably one of those instant things that will help you grow in your marriage, because if you get up 30 minutes before your wife and you prepare yourself for the day, and then when you greet your wife for the first time, you know that you already have things aligned with what you need to do. All right. So what could your 30-minute extra routine look like? And this is also relative to when your wife gets up or when your kids get up or when you have to be to work and stuff like that. Obviously, there's external stressors or influencers to this particular aspect. But when you get up 30 minutes early, you can read your Bible, pray if you're a person of faith like I am. That's one of the things that I love doing early on in the morning when no one is around me and it's just me and the Lord. I get time to spend with my Father as I'm growing, not only in faith, but also as a husband. That is crucial. Now, if you're not a person of faith and you say, okay, well, what can I do with my 30 minutes of extra time? Well, you can start planning out your day. What are the big things that you must do? I would say 2 to 3 things that you must do. And I wouldn't include work in that planning. You could if you want to, but it should be things that you have to do that no one else could do. And it doesn't already have a time period, right? We want to kind of set aside the time to do the things that we need to get done. So if you say, I need to mow the lawn and go to the grocery store and I don't know, wash the car. All right. There's your 3 things. And those things need to get done that day. Maybe those are the things that help you love your wife or show that you love your wife because maybe she asked you to do one of those 3 things or all 3 of those things. It doesn't matter. So now you're prioritizing and preparing them, and that's going to help you. Here's how it's going to help you. First, you'll know when you're going to go do those things. So you don't have to say at some point today, I need to go to the grocery store, wash the car and mow the lawn. You can say, all right, I'm going to mow the lawn maybe at 10 o'clock in the morning before the sun gets too high, but after everyone's awake. I don't know, maybe it's 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, doesn't matter, right? You now are thinking through that and you're not reacting to the day. You're being proactive and preparing for the day. But more importantly, when you see your wife, you can start laying out those things because you've already gotten up. You've gone before her and you set the path of saying, hey, today I'm going to mow the lawn at 10 o'clock. I'll hit the grocery store around 1 and then I'll get the car washed. Or, maybe we'll flip that because it makes more sense to go get the car washed before you go to the grocery store, at least in my experience, especially if you get like dairy products or frozen foods or stuff like that. So now that I have the day planned, I can tell my wife and let her know like, hey, look, this is what I'm going to do. Now, if the things that you are planning require coordination with someone else, plan those things loosely. All right. But the goal here, waking up 30 minutes early, preparing for the day, you are now going a little bit ahead of your wife. And I guess now is a good point for me to clarify that when I say go beyond or go further than your wife so you can bring her along, I'm not saying like you have to go miles ahead of your wife, right? In this case, I'm talking 30 minutes, like you had a little bit extra time to kind of prepare and plan. Now, if you say, Chris, I absolutely do not want to wake up. All right. One of the other things that you could do when you wake up 30 minutes early, you could work out. And that's great. It's like you are the only person that benefits from working out. And there's so many benefits from it. I won't get into it. I wish I could say I was the most consistent at working out every single morning, but I'm not. I'm just not. I like to work out in the afternoons, but it is what it is. The point that I'm making here is when you get up early, you go a little bit ahead of your wife to prepare for the day. So when you do greet her, you already have a plan of action that you can kind of walk her down. All right. And don't worry, we're going to talk about what it's like to really plan things accordingly with your wife. Now, the point that I wanted to clarify about not having to go miles ahead or anything beyond the 30 minutes is if for whatever reason you're like, I don't want to wake up 30 minutes early, what you could do is say the night before, you go ahead and plan out what that day looks like. But that's also a method of going ahead and before your wife. Anytime that you're giving like a vision, right? Because as leaders, we cast vision. This is something I learned from John Maxwell. Leaders see more and before. And those principles matter the exact same in marriage as they do in corporate America or leading a military organization, whatever. If you as the leader are seeing more and before, then that's the role that you have to play. Now, that's not to say that your wife can't see more and before, because our wives are also leaders in our marriage. And that's really what I wanted to clarify, that your wife should also be doing this. She should be starting with herself. But we aren't in control of the actions of our wives. We're in control of our actions. And that's the reason why we're focusing on what we can do to empower, to enrich our marriage. All right. And that's ultimately the point that I want to clarify. I know I kind of went around and about, but that's just the way that I think. Now, the last thing that I'll say about what we can do to go further than where we are today is pick one area in your life that you are just completely challenged in, whatever it may be, and learn how to get 1% better every single day or 1% better every single week. Now, if you get 1% better every single day and you do that every day, 365 days in a year means that you're going to get 365% better at that thing. Whatever that looks like, it's relative to you, and no one is really measuring it except for you. So you get to choose what that parameter looks like. All right. Now, if you do it 1% every single week, because maybe it's a weekly thing that you can only work on once a week to get better, then that's fine. And it doesn't matter what this thing is. If you're a woodsman or a woodsmith, I think that's what it's called, and you build furniture or whatever, and you're trying to learn something very special or technical, and you can only dedicate a little bit of time once a week to do that, that's fine. Do it. Get better. Perfect your craft. Perfecting the things outside of our marriage without overshadowing taking the time to build our marriage are only going to help us grow in the marriage. Let me say that in a little bit more straightforward way. When we do things that we're interested in that help us grow, it helps fuel our ability to focus on the things and to grow in the things that help build our marriage, like communication, like empathy, like emotional intelligence, like true relationship building, the trust that our wives need. When we learn how to grow outside of the marriage, it helps us grow inside of the marriage. But we just can't focus 100% outside of our marriage and think that that's going to help us grow. All right. And take that from a person who tried to spend as much as he possibly could in investing in his marriage. It did not work out the way that I expected it to. All right. There were positives to it, but there were a lot of negatives to it. And the negatives were starting to really eat away at our marriage. So take that for what it's worth. But the goal here is you find something that you are challenged in or something that you want to grow in, and then you start growing, because that's going to get you in the mindset of identifying things where you can go a little bit further. Again, you don't have to go miles ahead of your wife. You just got to go a little bit further. Once you get there, then you say, okay, how will this help me pave the way in our relationship so I can usher my wife in to this place, right? Because we're the visionary. We see more and before. Again, not saying that our wives won't see more and before. They just see differently than we do. And we see differently than they do. And that is what makes marriage so awesome, having the partner to really navigate life. My wife sees things that I will never see until she brings it to my attention. And she says, hey, Chris, did you know that this is about to happen? No, I did not know that that was about to happen, because she sees things that are happening behind me. When I'm looking forward, she's looking back to make sure that we're covered. So I'm driving her forward, and she's making sure that whatever I missed that's behind us, she calls it out and says, hey, you missed this. And then I'm like, oh yeah, we need to go take care of that. And then she takes care of it. Or I see something that's coming that she doesn't see. And then she says, oh, I didn't even think to do that. We're all going to encounter at some point. This is the beauty of marriage. Now, I talked a lot about husbands, and you may be fired up right now as a husband. You're like, hey, I'm ready to just grow, and I need to be better at leading my wife. And that's a wonderful thing. But I would be remiss if I didn't actually share the simple idea that is so profound and so amazing, because I was kind of alluding to it just a second ago when I said my wife sees things in places that I'm not even looking, and I see things in places she's not even looking. Is that your wife may have already gone further than you have in places, and it is important that we learn to glean from each other. All right. So again, we're in control of our actions as husbands, because if you are a listener of this podcast, you are taking charge of the things that you are responsible for, taking accountability for the things that you're responsible for. And one of those things is learning from your wife. One of the things that my wife is just amazing at is emotional intelligence. She can just sense the pressure in a person. Now, with me as a military member and, a relatively, we'll say I'm a proud man, right? Like, I am very inspired to achieve things and drive things. I'm driven. My wife will sense things in people that I will, again, completely miss because I'm not looking for it. She has done this in our marriage, in relationships that really matter, like my relationship with my mother and my sister, that I love my mom and my sister, but I miss things sometimes. And she hears things in their voice, and she's like, hey, you might want to go talk to your mom about this. And I'm like, nah, she's fine. Because I heard the words that my mom said, but I didn't hear what my mom was saying, what she was conveying. And my wife picked up on it. And as a husband, I used to think like, look, babe, that's some girl nonsense. Like, my mom is fine. She said she was fine. And I would ignore or shrug my wife off. But then when I actually took my wife up on going to check on my mom and following up with her in a few instances, I found that there was more going on than what my mom was saying. And had I not listened to my wife, again, she's looking in places because she's gone further in emotional intelligence than I have. And, as a person who likes to think that he has a good grip on emotional intelligence, that is an example of where my emotional intelligence, it is not very good. And because of that, I've learned to listen differently to my mother when I speak with her than what I used to in the past. And that is what I'm saying we need to learn to glean from. Now, how do you know where your wife has gone further than you? Well, the easiest way is to take inventory of all of the positive qualities that you find in your wife. Now, for some husbands, this may be a challenge for you. And then guess what? This is where you get to every single day get 1% better by writing down the quality of your wife. Now, if you have the wife journal, you can use any of the pages in there to write down whatever qualities that you find valuable or positive in your wife. And that's an easy and instant way of going further or seeing where your wife has gone further. So that way you can glean from her and then you can grow. All right. See, circling back to that 1%. Now, notice I didn't talk about a few things when I say, or actually, let me just say it very flat out. When I'm talking about writing down qualities, I'm not talking about cooking, cleaning, or raising the kids. All right. Those are the stereotypical wife duties, if you will. And I am not one of those people that's saying those aren't important and that those aren't good qualities to have in a wife. Those are qualities that my wife has, and I love them. Trust me, I do. And I commend her for all of those things in our relationship. But those aren't the only qualities. I want to go deeper to the character of my wife, because cooking and cleaning, those are skills. That doesn't talk about the type of person that my wife is. Because if she was terrible at cooking, which she's not, and if you're listening to this, honey, you know you're not bad at cooking. I love your food. But the emotional intelligence aspect of her gentle responses to people who are hurting or who may be a little bit more upset or frustrated or sad. Her genuine ability to build relationships and to hold friendships. Like, my wife can hold a friendship so much longer than I have ever been able to. She is just genuinely a good friend. Those are the types of character traits that I'm saying, like the qualities that we should be looking for in our wives, because those are the things that will stand the test of time. Because anyone who cleans well today could have a dirty house tomorrow, right? Skills can fade, but things that are part of the personality or the character of a person, those things last a lot longer, and they are so much more valuable than the skills that we learn. Not to negate the skills that we learn. All right. So be observant of your wife when she is exhibiting some of these personality traits that you can glean from that are an indication that she's gone a little bit further than you have in those areas. See, part of being a really good leader in any organization, a marriage, a business, whatever, is that you step back from sitting on the throne, so to speak, and driving the ship, and you actually go and observe what is happening, because you're going to witness so many things. And when we do this in our marriage, when we observe our wives, you will learn so much about her that will help you love her. And it gets to the tagline of this show. You're going to find ways to love your wife every day, but you can't do that if all you're doing is directing in the name of leadership. Good and effective leaders know how to step back and spend time in the thing that they're leading. There's this saying in sales of, you can't sell something you won't purchase yourself. Would you want to be on the other side of your leadership in marriage? That's a question you have to ask yourself. And don't just answer yes because you want to pump yourself up. Really sit down and think that through. But that gets really deep, and that goes further than the content and context of today's episode, which is starting with ourselves to go further so we can lead our wives and enrich our marriage in a way that only we can, because our wives, they need the leadership from us just as much as we need the leadership and partnership from them. And we see things at different times and in different ways. It is so important that we work together in our marriage. But what's more important is that you, as a husband who takes control and accountability of the actions that you have and the responsibility in the marriage, it's important that you find a way to love your wife every day. Peace.